What's up, YouTube? We've already done the Hellboy mask, and we've also done the right hand of doom. So today, we're going to be doing the chest and a neck.
Okay, so the first thing I did was trace all my patterns out onto some 1/2-inch thick EVA foam mats. And I want to point out here that all these were cut at an outward angle following the line. And what I mean is, if you look at the pattern here, and then you look at, let me line this up, and you look at what I actually cut out, you see there's an angle, so it sticks out wider. I did that because I'm going to heat and curve these, and whenever I do, it'll make it more flush to line up. However, my angle cuts and my edges are not pretty, so I am going to have to Dremel these up. But before I do that, I am going to go through and heat all this with the heat gun. Now, the only place I did not cut an outward angle was on these V-cuts, and I did an inward angle. That's so that whenever we glue this together, it'll help to give it more of a curve. And over here, I have my Drill Master dual setting heat gun, and I'm going to start by isolating one piece at a time and getting it hot on both sides. Now that I have all of the pieces heated and curved, I both curved them this way, and also curved the chest pieces, and now I just took some DAP Weldwood contact cement and brushed it onto both surfaces that I want to glue here, i.e. each side of the V-cuts. And now I'm going to allow that to sit for 15 to 20 minutes. And once it's dry to the touch, I will push both sides together, and that will form a permanent bond. Okay, so here the pieces are all sanded, and I'm rounding them out pretty good, but of course flattened the bottom edge here where I need to glue them together. And of course I did that at each spot where it needs to be glued together. And I've applied contact cement all along the edges that are going to be joined. And I'm going to glue one side together, and I'm going to line these up so that this center line here is straight. And then once both sides are glued, I will then glue them both together down the center. Okay, so I have the two halves here assembled, and next I will put contact cement down the center of each one, allow them to sit for 20 minutes, and then join the two together. Now that I have both sides glued together here, I am going to work on my shoulder straps. Now you'll notice I've already traced out a line here. You can go several different ways with this. If you already have some kind of rig like a tactical vest or something, you could just remove the front of it and attach the straps to this and use the back of the tactical vest to put it on you. And it's up to you. I am going to actually make my own straps, and that is going to be with the patterns up on Facebook. And you'll notice I've put lines here. One or two ways you could go with this. One, you could cut it here and just butt it up against it and contact cement it on the top. What I'm actually going to do is sand down some of this textured area, and I'm going to contact this directly to this. This here is just a guideline, so I know where to stop and start with my contact cement. I've lined up and glued my piece on, and then I took my hot glue gun and I sealed around it just to make sure that it stays in place. And I also took from the back and did a real thin, even bead over everything. I don't use too much, and I usually use low temp glue sticks for this because they seem to be a little bit more flexible than the high temp. That way that when you tighten this down, it can still curve and conform to your body. Then next, I took and I cut out the pieces for the clavicle. And each one of these, I just cut the edges here at an angle. You can see they're not straight on every side, except for where it's going to meet to the chest part. That actual area, I cut straight so that it butts up with the chest. I'm going to go ahead and glue these two in place with contact cement. Okay, now that I have my clavicle pieces on here, I'm going to move on to the side pieces. Now there's not a pattern for this, but what I did was extremely simple. I literally just took a sheet of 5mm foam. These happen to be black, this happens to be blue. And I just lined it up and folded it in half. And I just cut along this top edge with some scissors. And then turned those half pieces sideways. Traced out where the sides are. I did sand this down here, just like I did up here, so that it could attach more evenly. And now I've applied contact cement to both. And then I am going to glue both sides on. Okay, so I've gone through and glued on the side pieces. And then, much like before, I sealed around it with hot glue just to make sure it stays in place. And I also heated this first to curve it with the heat gun. Then I heated individual areas to kind of pull out like additional muscle looking pieces. For the most part, I feel like the coat is going to come right down here. But if I move it aside to grab, you know, say like the Samaritan or something else, you may see something sticking out. So I at least want to make the attempt to make it look like, you know, back here. I don't think I'll ever move the coat that far off my body because at this point it's fully wrapping around my ribs. But yeah, and then also just heated these two so that they lay back as well. Okay, so now I got the clavicle and all that on, and the side pieces. I've gone ahead and finished the back, and I just used what I had lying around, which was a piece of scrap leather, and I put some industrial strength velcro on it so it can be attached in the back. And then I put it on, and with the assistance of my fiance, I figured out how long to put these elastic straps. So to put it on, I just opened the back, put my arms through it, and tightened it in the back. And that's pretty much it. And I just did the elastic just tight enough that it pulls this part flush to my body. I didn't want it super tight. Also, having it super tight will wear out the elastic, and then you will have to replace it. And I glued the elastic on, and the leather, and the industrial strength Velcro with contact cement, and then I just kind of blurbed around the edge, which is ugly, but you're not going to see it because I'm going to have a coat over all this. But went over that with hot glue, and then a little super glue around the inside seam of that just to make sure everything stays real good. I did that pretty much on everything. The leather, all of it. Now it is time for some plasti dip. Now that plasti dip is dry, I'm going to go ahead and paint this with some red paint. What I do is mix about 2-3 parts of the opaque red createx airbrush paint with some createx transparent deep red, about 1 part of that, with some water to thin it out. As far as the consistency of that, like the thinner you make it, the more layers you're going to have to do, but you know, sometimes it's easier to add more and you can't really take it away once it's on there. Okay, so I got the paint job done, and you probably noticed that I did it a little thicker towards the center of the piece and a little thinner around the edges, so it'll be a little darker in between the actual muscles and underneath there and around there and whatnot. Now I think I'm probably going to go ahead and move on and make a neck piece. Okay, so for the neck piece, the first thing I do, and there's not a pattern for this because it's kind of based upon the size of your neck, is I cut some EVA foam in the center of it. I measure a little bit longer than the actual distance of my neck. I would say about a ½ inch on either end. This right now will not fit me. It's too tall. But part of my theory is if I have some extra there, I can trim some off. And I scale it up to the back to about an extra inch overall, a ½ inch on top and bottom. This will be to help cover the back of my neck where the mask angles up a little bit in the back. The chin will come down further in the front and cover this, so like I say, I can always trim it to be more comfortable. And the first thing I start off by doing is I heat this with a heat gun just to get into a basic circle. Now, next up from here, I'm going to start aggressively heating certain areas, like this bottom part here, so I can curve and flare it out. I need it to be curved and flared so it'll match up and meet on this. Okay, this is what I was talking about by curving out the top and the bottom. I heat it from the inside first, and with one hand I pull this way and one hand I pull the other way, and that's so I can keep it round while stretching this out. And you'll notice I've stretched the foam somewhat considerably thin here. I would say probably closer to 4mm than the actual center thickness. Next, I'm going to heat the center here and push in an Adam's apple, and I trimmed it up here just to fit my jawline and neck a little better. And through here I'm going to put some tendon/muscle lines into it. Okay, I have gone ahead here and, like I said, pushed in the Adam's apple in the center of the throat and pulled out some tendon/muscle areas on both sides here. You could always shape and put whatever you wanted and just leave it around, I guess, but I wanted some definition. And in the back here, I put some Velcro in by using some leather and gluing the soft part here and the sticky part to the leather so they can join together. And I made this a little bit bigger than my neck. If it moves around or is a little awkward, which I doubt it will because of the cuts I have here reflecting my jaw and my neck, I will put some spacers or some padding in it, but I left it big enough that it's not like choking me or essentially putting me in a neck brace, and also large enough that some air can pass through. Not much, but some air, so my skin isn't straight up against the foam constantly. And now I'm going to go ahead and plasti dip this. Okay, so here it is with the coat. Now that I've painted the neck with the same type of paint that I used to paint the mask and the chest. So I can actually move my head side to side somewhat, and I can actually turn it left and right, which is important, but it still is going to hold my head pretty much more or less here. I don't have all that much room, but you can see how much larger it makes my neck look. And then of course the chest and the abs with the coat. Like I say, if you're not wearing a coat for your Hellboy cosplay, this probably isn't going to be the best. Okay, so that's pretty much going to wrap it up for this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and as always, thank you for watching.